right, here we are. Answering the question that I'm sure you've all been wanting to know the answer to, which is, how do I start this art thing, okay? Now, there's a lot of mental gymnastics that's actually getting in your way. So this is not a technical workshop. This is much more of a mindset workshop, which will then transfer over into the technical eventually. As of right now, this is just about you getting out of your head and into the art. That's something that I like to say a lot. It's about getting out of your head and into the art. So we're gonna go ahead and explore that and figure out how to do that. And it's interestingly simple, but just so you know, broken focus is the quickest way to murder your dreams. So we'll go ahead and get into it right now, but just letting you know what it is about versus what you may want to think that it's going to be about. Okay, so it's practical stuff here. So step one. So this is something that a lot of people really get freaked out about. There is this mindset where, hey, once I start drawing and doing the things, then it is official and now people are going to be critiquing. Stop, we haven't gotten that far yet. We're just drafting, okay? Word for the day is draft. Not complete work, not Mona Lisa, none of that. Draft, okay? So we're just making a version, whether it be whatever it is in terms of whether you're in sketches, whether you're working with clay, whatever it is, it's just a draft, and hold on to the mentality that it's just a draft by the mercies of God. Someone is not going to beat you up because you didn't do it right, which leads me to my second thing actually, and that is building a habit that it is indeed a draft, because you need to actually give yourself a timer. Be your smartwatch, it can be your phone, it can be a number of different things, but please, please, please understand that this is a draft and have it only take maybe 10, 15 minutes. Why? Because that gets you to not waste the time figuring out all the perfect ways to make it happen perfectly. It's like, stop, this is a draft. So the draft probably only needs to take maybe 10, 15 minutes to get it out there. And you may feel a little bit of tightness and you saying, oh my God, like, again, draft. This is not a complete work. This is just you sketching out or modeling out or whatevering it out so that you don't get in your head and then never do it, all right? The whole point of this is to make sure you get out of your head and into the art. So then, giving yourself a little stopping point or starting a stopping point helps an awful lot. When that bell goes off, you'll be fine. Now, again, when it comes to time limits like that, have you ever been in a hurry and you needed to do something and what would have taken you like 2 hours because your mind said that you have 2 hours to do it, took you like 15, 20 minutes. Because when you use time to focus versus time to give yourself more and more cushioning, when you're intentional with your time, saying, I only have this much time that I'm going to give myself, then you're not spending 2 hours with something that only takes 10 to 15 minutes. So the more time you give yourself, the more time you sometimes give yourself to not focus on what you're trying to actually accomplish. So very, very important. Start doing that until you start getting to the rhythm of how to draft, and then it'll be intuitive, and then you won't necessarily need the timer anymore. It'll be just automatically like, draft, no one cares. Here we go. We're just putting characters here and spacing this out here and putting some ideas down. That's all we're doing. Nothing fancy, nothing epic. All right, now then. So this is where the most important thing probably on this list that I might have to mention here. The most important thing actually is whose audience are you choosing on this? So the audience that you're choosing this with is very, very specific. Meaning there's only really 2 audiences, maybe 3 if you believe in God. But there's only really 2 audiences. I would say 3 for me. But the 2 audiences are for yourself, or probably more accurately say that the horrible critic of yourself that's just sitting on your shoulder, just telling you you're blah, 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 and that this is gonna happen. Your imaginary 4th grade teacher who's really, really mean, and you somehow personified this character in your head that he or she is just grading you for everything wrong that you do, and that you are absolutely terrified of making this imaginary teacher that you have very, very sorrowful in that you have somehow erred in some egregious way. That is one of the people that could be making this for, or you could be making it for a group of people or a person that you actually love and care about, right? So this, if you make it for the critic is never satisfied. Ever. The critic's never satisfied. So to make something for the critic, to make yourself feel better, is a losing battle. But when you're making something for an audience, a group of people, a demographic, or just a few people that you care about, or just maybe even one person that you care about, the focus becomes very, very clear, and then you begin to make more progress. And so some of you might be saying that, well, I want to be special, but you can make it special. But once again, you do these minor steps, this drafting, and then after that, you go into more detail, and then you begin to do those things individually, but you don't, once again, drop into this idea of, I'm going to make it for this critic that's never satisfied, that hates everything that I do, that blah, 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 blah. Who are you actually making it for? You need to actually settle that in your mind and in your heart. So, again, fellow learners or supportive friends or a niche community, because here's the thing about it, you can actually, even when it comes to a niche community, they're there to help you and they're to take care of you and they're to give you feedback or whatever. So all these audiences here are a lot friendlier to you, so that ought to relieve a lot of the pressure. And again, these are not people that you should, because I hate the word should. The only thing that I would consider to be a should is maybe like the things and laws of God which governs the universe. That's a should thing. But outside of that, who is should? I've never met should before in my life about how things should go, who I should be making art for, should whatever. I know who is. Y'all know who is. Y'all are very familiar with is. We met is many times before. We've never met should. Because how far are you going to trace back should? Well, I should have done it this way. Well, okay, you can now trace it back to, well, this should have happened last week, and then this should have happened last year, and then this should have happened when I was a little kid, and then this should have happened when my parents were born, and then this should have happened. How far do you want to go back with should? Stop shooting all over yourself. Anyway, but these people are going to be a lot friendlier to you than the critic. And if, once again, I know that some people that you think you should be sharing it with, if they are not supportive, even if it is family, then don't make it for them. But it's my mom, I should. Shut up. Who should? Once again, who should? No, I do want to make this for my 5th grade teacher. I do want to do that. But you should value your relationship with your brother more than, like, my brother and I don't click like that. The teacher that supported me in my artwork, she did. So I'm gonna make this for her. See the difference? Should they hear? All right, so now we have the sharing the draft. So now you have done the thing, you have gone from draft to maybe inking to then coloring to then whatever, and so you're pretty much done. And even when you're done, it should still be in your mind as a draft. Because the second that you go over into perfectionism, you're going to start getting nervous and you're going to start making weird mistakes and then you're going to hate it. In my mind, all artwork is actually a draft because it's never going to be done. But the draft that you create is something that people will actually value and actually really care about it or whatever else, Then from there, once you begin to get into the practice of communicating those ideas effectively within your artwork, then you'll be like, okay, well, this feels complete now. It's because of the interactions you're having with other people that it begins to feel complete. Like I've actually achieved what I needed to achieve. And the only way you can get there is if you ask for feedback on your draft. You see that? So once you put it out there as a complete work, you're kind of like, okay, everyone's going to say this and you're going to treat it like this. Okay, cool. And I'm sure it was cool, but you're not getting any feedback on that. You can get feedback by asking questions. Or questions, depending on where you're from. So you can ask these questions, like what part stands out first? What feels unclear or confusing? What would you want to see more of? So when you're posting it maybe on social media or whatever, then it's like you're trying to then get feedback on it and an engagement with it. That's going to help the post a lot. And then furthermore, that's going to give you very, very clear feedback on what you maybe need to improve on. Because once again, you can do all over again. Why? Because it's a draft, right? It's a complete first draft. And so now you have the freedom to go back over it with a new engagement and make it clearer than it was before. Because you're just asking questions. He or she who asks questions is the one who actually has control over the conversation. Always remember that. So when you're doing this stuff, does it feel more like X or Y? What title would you give this? So you can take the things that worked in the first draft and then put them into the second draft and do it all over again. Or you can be like, well, I'm done with that. I'm now going to take those principles and those ideas and those things and put them into a new piece with a new audience, with a new whatever else. So again, a lot of this stuff is just games you're playing in your head. You put all this pressure from the imaginary critic, and you're making art for the imaginary critic who hates everything that you do all the time. And so you're unclear about what you're even making half the time because you're doing it for this critic that can never be satisfied. And so therefore, you're overwhelmed by all the choices that you could possibly do to make this critic shut their doggone mouth, and now you're stuck. But when you treat it like a draft, and you make it for specific people or a specific person because you care about them and love them, ain't gotta be whoever should, it ain't about should, who actually is. Who actually is someone that you care about and that you love, and you'll finish it for them because you have that love and care for them. And they want to see you succeed anyway, so it's no pressure, right? The only pressure you're putting on yourself is you, so therefore it needs you. Once you begin to hit the pressure onto yourself, you're going back into the critic mode, and you need to just go back and focus in on them. All you gotta do is focus. And the more that you focus in on what you're trying to focus in on, clearer things will get. So yes, post the draft, frame it as work in progress, ask simple questions to invite engagement. So that will help your algorithm and your engagement and things like that too, because you're gonna be getting comments in there, and those comments will then feed the post, and then you'll get from there if you're looking for that. I'm not saying that you have to, but I am saying that if you do want to become this bona fide artist, asking questions does lead to better engagement than not. I think this is just about it. So core loop is draft fast, pick a real audience, share the for engagement, and refine the next draft. So if you can do these things right here, you can begin to repeat the process. And once you have a process, then you're good. These are some of the things that I teach people a lot. I teach people process. Process is the most valuable thing I can teach you. And this is one of the processes right here just to get started. I like systems. I like to make sure that I'm reducing friction, because I'm not trying to sit there and tell you how to do art. I'm telling you to decide and giving you entry points into a process. And once you get good at the process, you'll start producing. And once you start producing more of it, you'll get better at it. And then once you get better at it, you'll have a body of work. And then that body of work, one of those bodies in the work will absolutely be the thing that takes you to a different level. See that? And all this came from, just think of it as a draft. I have almost I have almost a 900-page graphic novel that I still consider a draft. Because I'm just like, well, I can go back over and do this one, become a better artist, or I can give this over to someone who is a better artist and do like the One Punch Man. One Punch Man had basically the equivalent of stick figures when it first started. And now someone took that project and made it look beautiful. Different artist though, super professional artist, you know? So again, you'll have the work, you'll have something. Even if it doesn't look the way that you want it to look, it doesn't matter. Why? Because it's a draft. Other people are going to help you refine that diamond in the rough anyway. So to not treat it as though it's a draft gets you back into the critic mode, and the critic mode is going to kill everything, including your momentum. So get you a process. Just draft fast, 10, 15 minutes. And then from there, because you'll be spacing out where you want to put things and where you want the page to be at. You'll be making decisions. You begin to a rhythm of decisions. When you get to that rhythm of the decisions, then after that, you can go ahead and ink it over, or you can go ahead and begin to sculpt it the way that you've drawn it out. But the ideas themselves are on the paper. And then after that, things like color, you can apply color theory, or you can do whatever you want to do with the inks, or you can do whatever it is that you want to do. But it has to be drafted first. That is the first thing that people don't do, and they think that they gotta make this beautiful thing right off the rip, and no, they don't. That's cap, dog. So that's the core loop, and yeah, that's actually it. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I'll be taking questions here in a little bit, but for people online, just leave those questions in the comments, and I'll be able to answer them in terms of helping you get out of your mind and get into the art. If you have any kind of, because I'm not really here to answer too many technical questions right now, But I just want to make sure that you guys are understanding how to get out of this funk, get out of this, out of your head, get out of all this stuff that's going on, and just step right into everything that you're wanting to do by simply going by a simple process, to get started. And then after that, I can take you to some other processes too that I'll be giving you either through a personal workshop that I have or maybe just a one-on-one time. But anyway, thank you very much, and let's get to the things. Okay, ta-ta.